Imagine not watching Rings of Power because it's not Tolkien. You are missing out on something incredible. Yep, usually I keep my opinions somewhat to myself during these reviews, but this time no. Season 2 of The Rings of Power is amazing, and by the looks of it, we ain't seen nothing yet. This is the review of Champions, and I'm your host, Grandmaster. With me is a powerful panel made up of the finest champions Sakar has to offer. Voice only, we have Mr. Lord Deathman. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Not voice only, but showing his beautiful face on camera, as always. Merv, how are you, man?
Fantastic.
That's great to hear. Today we're going to talk about episode 6 of season 2 of The Rings of Power. But before we do, I want to ask you all to help us out. Like and share this video, subscribe to our channel, and join our forum at sakard.freeforums.net. Set up an account, get to know us, and join our shows. Yes, you can if you want to. Consider this your final warning. After this point, we're going to spoil the episode for you. So if you haven't seen this week's episode, go do that first and then check out our review for it. We seem to be up for a great season finale for the next 2 episodes. And how was the setup? And that's what we're going to discuss right now. And well, Mr. Lord Deathman, can I have your quick thoughts on episode 6 and 5? Because you didn't join us last week. So maybe you have something to say about that as well.
Sure. This show has really been a joy to watch. I liked episode 5. I didn't think it was the greatest episode of the show, but it certainly did have quite a few high points in that episode. And I think episode 6, this one that just came out, is even better and probably, and I'm really struggling to think after having watched 6 episodes, but I do think it's my favorite one in the series so far. Again, I think this season in general just represents a huge improvement and a step up in the pacing and the overall storytelling. And I continue to be confounded by those who call this kind of like Tolkien fan fiction or Tolkien light. Love the performances, love the way the story is unfolding, and I can't wait to get into a little bit more detail in the deep dive and talk about some specific moments and likes and a few dislikes.
Yeah, there's always dislikes. Merv, can I have your quick thoughts on episode 6?
Sure. I enjoyed it for the most part, but I did find that I guess the pacing, because it included all of the storylines, I felt like I missed whenever it was really focused in the last couple episodes, and some of the storylines felt like they did kind of tread water this week. But it episode for the finale, or the penultimate episode, which in a lot of series winds up being like the more action-packed portion of the series. But I still enjoyed pretty much everything that I saw. It was just I almost wish that they had focused on certain storylines and left other ones for the next couple episodes.
What are the storylines you were talking about?
So I felt like the Numenorian storyline was fantastic. I loved the trial by Valar, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
That whole the essentially they're on the cusp of a civil war, basically. Whether they're going to follow the queen or the king, and I love that this added more fuel to that fire. I enjoyed the dwarf storyline here, showing how Doran the Third is fallen into corruption, and of course, and then Sauron. Sauron's touch on everything in this whole episode was fantastic. You could just see his threads getting woven throughout every single storyline. But some of the ones that didn't really land for me, I guess, were like the Hobbits. They had it felt like one scene that could have just been thrown away, and even not Gandalf, like he was in like one scene, and I like seeing Tom Bombadil, and I like this, but I just kind of wish it would have progressed a little further, or progress a little further next episode whenever you got more time to actually deep dive into it. I felt like there was a little bit of too much bouncing around for me, that I couldn't really feel invested in a lot of the storylines that I wanted to feel invested in, because you only spent like one or two scenes with these characters this week.
Hmm. Well, the storyline you didn't mention at all was the storyline Adar Galadriel, which
Mhm.
actually thought was one of the more interesting things that was happening in this week's episode. Do you agree on that?
Yeah, pretty much consistently throughout these first two seasons. Honestly, I thought Adar as a character and just his whole storyline has been more interesting. Um, yeah, I enjoyed the scenes between him and Galadriel. It felt, especially at the end, it's like you should know more than anyone. At the Adar character should know more than anyone that like this could be a trap, right? You know how Sauron operates more than probably anyone else in the world. And the fact that he's not putting these two pieces together stubbornly is a little
Hmm.
bit frustrating. But that goes back to Sauron's kind of weaving his web throughout the
Yeah.
entirety of Middle Earth at the moment, and causing dissent and all this stuff everywhere. And it's really cool to see it from that perspective. Yeah, I enjoyed their storyline a lot. I hope. I don't know. It almost feels like we might. I don't know if we're going to start with a huge battle at. I'm bad with the city name, that wherever they're attacking with
Aragon.
Celebrimbor. Yeah, Eregion. I hope we get to see a little bit of that battle, and not just what we saw in the last part of this episode. Just a scene, just an action sequence.
Well,
Um,
it could very well be that they just make episode 7 the fall of Aragon.
sure. Yeah, and I'd
Uh,
be fine with that. I'm
yeah.
curious to see like what Sauron's plan is, because he puts himself in like in the line of fire essentially here.
Mm.
And there's a plan. Clearly, there's a plan, because he seems to want this to happen. He wants their attack on. He wants the elves to fall, and he wants the
Mhm.
orcs there, and
Yeah.
somehow, some way, this is going to work into his favor. I'm curious to see how.
Yeah, the actor that playing Sauron did practice his smile a lot in episode 6. Yeah. Lord Deathman, moving on to you. You say you had some nitpicks or dislikes. Let's have it.
Sure. I think at 2 seasons into the show, 6 episodes, with only 2 episodes left in the season, we have really overplayed our hand with regards to the mystery of who this Istar or this wizard is, right? Like we really we should be past this by now. And it is just becoming a drag on the show in terms of just cognitively thinking about it, right? Like I think they did a good job of cutting between all these different stories. And I know Merv felt a little differently in that there might have been too many hops, but I kind of like getting a little taste of what was going on from everybody's perspective in terms of how this conflict with Sauron was kind of affecting these different corners of Middle Earth in general. So I enjoyed that part of it, but then you get to the part with Tom, what's the last name there, Merv? Help me out.
Bombadil.
Bombador, is it? Bombadil. There
Bombadil.
we go.
Yeah.
Bombadil. And he's a pleasant enough character, and I kind of get the idea that he's a proxy for Tolkien, sort of this like maybe omniscient eye on the whole story of the Lord of the Rings, and that's why he seems a little detached. So I really do get that. I get the guidance he's trying to offer this wizard, but then you're kind of stuck thinking, who is this guy, right? And that just kind of takes away from your enjoyment from all the other storylines. That was a nitpick, and then I felt like if I had to say what was the weakest of the storylines, that typically tends to be the Harfoot ones, the sort of Hobbit ones that don't really land with me as much. But ironically, in this episode, it was actually maybe a tie between the Numenorian storyline and the Hobbit storyline. I like the Hobbit storyline because it kind of like they're the people who are just kind of going through this, and they probably have the least amount of agency in terms of what's going on with Sauron. That although they'll become much more prominent, we know in the future, but right now they're kind of in the back seat of all these proceedings. But I do like hearing it because they're kind of proxied for us, I think, as the audience in terms of their perspective. The Numenorian storyline, I love the idea of the trial by Valinor, or going by the old rules to kind of determine the fate of that character, the queen. But their storyline doesn't really seem as tied to Sauron's machinations as all of the other storylines are. So I do feel like there's this undercurrent of like, how are these people being manipulated, and how is this person being drawn into it? And I think this episode is just a really good example of how to balance many different storylines, how to show how they might be all tied together by this one overarching force or idea. I also think that just by virtue of knowing what's going to happen in the future of the show with the Lord of the Rings, these whole proceedings in this show really have this hugely tragic dimension to me. I don't know why I feel so empathically for these characters, because they're making mistakes and they're being manipulated, and eventually they're going to lose everything. Eregion will fall, right? Just because you kind of know these things, it's the one instance where a prequel kind of benefits from what its sequels are going to lay out in such a beautiful way. It kind of is a compliment to it, and it doesn't hurt it the way prequels tend to when they over explain things. This is just like, here's what led up to all of that fantastic stuff you saw in the early 2000s with the Lord of the Rings. I think they're doing a great job with it. And again, I'll close my comments by just saying, even if you hate this show, it is as pretty as a picture. Like I don't know if it's my TV, and I've got some TV from the good one off the Best Buy rack, but it just looks so gorgeous. I love to stick around for those. They do this kind of like behind the scenes type stuff where they interview these fat cat entitled creatives who work on the show, and they kind of give you a glimpse into it. And I'm like, holy smoke, the thing they put the queen in, that little like oasis before she's supposed to face this monster. I'm like, oh, that must have been special effects, right? Didn't they just like draw that in a computer? And then nope, they show you it's like it's a real place. All we did was like color grade it and do some close-ups in a tank. But yes, this is a real place. I'm like, wow, they are truly spending God knows how much money on this show, and they're really working to make it a beautiful fantasy. Top story of the episode, last note I'll make, it was really the Adar storyline, where he just seems so consumed with not falling under Sauron's thrall again, and moving quickly and decisively to just destroy the threat. And we just know as the audience that he's just playing right into Sauron's hands. Great episode. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I totally agree. Merv, you had a follow-up.
Yeah, just piggybacking on Lord Deathman's like sadness, I guess, what you mentioned, like where we know the outcomes of these. It really hits whenever you think like there's these whole cultures and civilizations and these like empires essentially that we know will fall. Like the Numenorians, we know, in essence they live, but we know their fate already. In like even like Khazad Dûm, like what's going to happen. You've known what's going to happen this whole time, but we still fall in love with like Durin the Third and his wife and all these dwarves, and you see their culture and like just the way that it like draws you in, and you're like, oh, they're living a good life, and that right underneath them is just this ticking time bomb of a Balrog just waiting to destroy everything, and that feels like that's like in a lot of different places right now. It's really, I agree.
One of the greatest things about this, what Lord Deathman was saying, and about the corruption of the rings and everything, that they are being manipulated by Sauron, but they also know they are being manipulated, but they just don't care because they get so much out of it. Like the elves, they just they know the rings kept us alive, and those dwarves know we use the mountain better and get the better riches out of the mountain, which is our goal. Uh, so they gladly accept this manipulation, and that makes it even more tragic to me. Lord Deathman.
Just a quick note that this episode could have used a splash of Elrond. Uh, he is my favorite character on the show, and his absence was conspicuously missing from this episode. But
Yeah,
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 that's all.
that's true. That's true. That's true. Yeah. You know what? Let's just move on to a rating for this week's episode. And I'm going to start with you, Merv.
I'm going to go 7.5. I did feel a bit of like this setup in this episode, and like I said, just the some of the storylines were fine, but the spreading out almost of the focus kind of made me feel like a lot of them were just kind of going through the motions just to be included. So 7.5. I think there's better episodes this season.
Okay, Lord Deathman.
I'm going to go with one higher than Merv at an 8.5. Again, I really enjoyed the fact that we got to touch on everybody's storyline briefly. Kind of felt like it caught me up to speed and sort of reiterated some things that might have escaped me in terms of details in the previous episodes. I love some of the visual effects in this, including the undersea monster, the confrontation with the queen. I thought that Sauron's sort of vision overlay with Celebrimbor, where he sees this beautiful Eregion and is compelled to go back inside and start working on the rings again. I thought that whole sequence was brilliant. Yeah, 8.5.
Yeah, I'm going to go right smack in the middle. I'm going to go 8 out of 10. I love this episode. I do agree with Merv about the pacing issues and the switching around of the storylines, where some stories basically were just added in. So we remember, oh, this is also happening. I don't need that. I prefer indeed, like, give me that in episode 8 again, what's happening there, and focus then on those storylines. So 8 out of 10. I agree with Lord Deathman. Visually, this show is gorgeous. I love the music. It reminds me so much of the music that was made for the movies, but it's different enough so it stands on its own. It really feels like it sets this show in the same world as the movies were set, and I think that was the goal Amazon had, and they did an excellent job on that. Lord Deathman.
Yep, last comment here. Since you mentioned the music, you might want to check the behind the scenes for this episode because they had, I think, the music director in the behind the scenes, and he talked about using like a Bulgarian woman's chorus. It just, he uses everything in his arsenal, and at his level as a composer, you would imagine that he just can get any resource he can to create beautiful, creative music. But yeah, check it out if you get a chance to backtrack.
Okay, people, a tip from Lord Deathman: always follow Death. Otherwise, he'll follow you. That will conclude this review of Champions for episode 6 of the Rings of Power season 2. We hope you have enjoyed our discussion today. If you did, you can help us out. Like and share this review and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And you can join our forum at sakara.freeforums.net. There's a link in the description below. Click it and you can sign up. We would love it if you do that. Next week, we will be reviewing episode 7. I also urge you to check out our review series for Agatha All Along and the Penguin starting this weekend. And in 2 weeks' time, we will be dropping 5 shows in 1 weekend. Stay tuned for that. For now, I thank you all, also on behalf of our champions, and wish you to never be blinded. Bye.